Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. The first major test of campaign 2016 gets underway this week in Iowa. The pregame show has been quite something. The GOP frontrunner Donald Trump left the debate. Then other candidates joined him at an alternative event. What are we to make of this volatile and unpredictable political landscape, even among the Democrats? To discuss, I'm joined by the president of CRC Public Relations and a veteran of several unorthodox presidential campaigns or insurgency campaigns, Buchanan in 92 and 96, and Steve Forbes, 2000 bid. Please welcome Greg Mueller to the program.
It's great to be with you,
Great
Raymond.
to see you, Greg.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with this. I've got to share this clip with you. This is Bill O'Reilly the other night on Fox, pleading, begging. I thought Bill was going to kneel down at one point and offer flowers to Donald Trump. He offered him milkshakes, but no flowers, to return to the Fox News stage after Trump decided he wasn't showing up. Watch this.
Will you just consider, I want you to consider, all right? Think about it. Say, look, I might come back. Forgive, go forward, answer the questions, look out for the folks. Just want you to consider it.
Well, what do you make of this? I mean, this was quite, this became a drama that went on for days, Greg. Was this a masterstroke by Trump, first of all, to say, I'm not doing the debate?
Well, I think, first of all, Trump is the epitome of the anti-establishment candidate. He is getting the reputation he's getting because he's sticking it to everybody. And Fox is on the table, too, as much as they're a great champion of a lot of conservative-oriented programming. And nobody's going to accuse Bill O'Reilly, Raymond, of being establishment. He's usually poking at them all the time. But it is a little slobbering to watch Bill offer milkshakes and everything else and almost kneel down, as you say, in order to be able to try to get Trump to come on the program. They were still, you know, tonight they were planning 2 debate segments. They didn't know which one they were pulling out. They were hoping that Trump maybe would show up at the last minute. None going to happen. But look, I think it's a risky play, but everything he does is risky in life. And I think that's the big challenge. Is it going to pay off? We don't know yet.
He's looking at the same polling numbers we are, and I just pulled his numbers from the summer when he announced to the president. He only dipped down twice. Once when John Boehner said he was leaving the speakership, and when Paul Ryan was sworn in. Otherwise, he has dominated, and it's the fuel, the oxygen of attention and media coverage that drives and is driving his candidacy. When I heard he was pulling out, I looked at this and said, it's bold, it's risky, but you know, it's typical Trump. It's counterintuitive. Everyone in this town would tell you this is the worst thing to do at this moment. I will bet you money tonight that this ends up redounding to his benefit.
Well, first of all, he's going to get a lot of media attention. That's what his whole campaign's about. He is what? He is reality television. He is always on his marketing message. He's always drawing attention to himself in some way. All the other candidates really don't know what to do with him. I think one big problem, though, is in Iowa, Raymond, they're really down-to-earth people there. They want a discussion. They want a debate. I've seen some reports out that said people that will lean in his way, this is sort of pushing them away from that. And that's the real gamble here. He's a casino guy, so maybe he's rolling the dice with himself.
Well, I want you to see this. This to me is an exemplar of the way in which he uses media, even Fox, to promote an event running on other networks. MSNBC, CNN, and C-SPAN, at a minimum, are the ones airing his alternative event, which is purportedly a veterans event to raise money and awareness for veterans and, of course, propel his candidacy. Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee also join him. Just watch this.
Well, I understand your opinion, Bill, but tomorrow night at 9 o'clock at Drake University, we're going to have a tremendous event, and I'll have much more than 60 seconds, frankly, and we're going to raise a lot of money for the veterans.
On message, on message, on message, on message, you're fired. I mean, this is Trump.
This is great stuff. I mean, those of us in media relations and political consultings, we couldn't have a better guy in terms of being on message. And that's the thing about him. He's always got a way to calculate into what he wants to talk about. But again, we're going to see, you know, the jury's still out on all this stuff. He is rewriting the rules. We don't know what's going to go out in Iowa. We don't know what's going to go out in Hampshire. What we do know is people are fed up with Washington. They're tired of it. None of the establishment candidates can seem to get a lane. All the conservatives and outsider sort of candidates, including Ted Cruz and Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson, they're all doing really well.
Is this the sequel to the Buchanan brigades and Pat Buchanan's insurgency candidacy that took after the elder Bush, and then he made a second run, coming out of Ross Perot. Were they the forefathers of Donald Trump? Who could be victorious?
I think it's kind of funny. By the way, Donald Trump, back in the day when Pat was raising these issues like immigration and the concern over border security and bad global trade deals that hurt American workers, you know, Trump's channeling all that. Trump was calling Pat some pretty nasty names back then. So the Donald has come a long way to Pat's side. But yeah, I think everybody seems to be a populist Buchanan Republican now. And it's working because those are the people that are doing best, because there is sort of a populism out there. There's a disenfranchisement from Washington and New York and the rest of the country.
See, I would argue exempting himself from the debate doesn't hurt Donald Trump for this reason. It did not substantially change the math when Trump was on the stage during these debates. He won every one, even though some of these he really didn't say very much.
Right.
So I think he's thinking at this point, hey, I'm leading the pack. I'm going to go with a feel-good rally over here. It's going to get just as much attention, if not more, than that debate, and I'm going to suck the oxygen out of the room.
Right, and he's doing that now. This happened in 1980 when Ronald Reagan said, I'm not going to debate George Bush in Iowa. Now, Reagan did wind up winning the nomination, if we recall, but when they all look back, you talk to any of those Reaganites, they were sorry they did that. They gave Bush momentum. So the question is, can Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, can any of those guys, Bush, can they get some momentum with Trump not sucking the air on the stage tonight?
We're going to continue talking here, but I want to give you a chance to jump into this conversation, the viewers, the listeners. You can call us at 800-221-9460 in the U.S. and internationally, 205-271-2980. You can also tweet me at Raymond Arroyo or email us at worldover@EWTN.com. We will get to your questions shortly. I know you have many of them about the nature of this race, the issues important to you. We'll get to all of that. Let's talk about Ted Cruz. He's the #2 guy. He's expected to do very well in Iowa. Is this an opportunity to get Ted Cruz, when he stands on that stage and Trump isn't there, do all of his competitors turn their fire on him?
I think there's a lot of truth to that, yes. I think Ted Cruz is going to be the front runner on the debate stage tonight. Rubio's going to go at him. Christie's going to go at him. They're all looking to break out. And remember, there's a very well-known reporter named David Yepsen. He's sort of the professor of all reporters of Iowa. He's now at a university at the Paul Simon Institute somewhere there. He said yesterday, everybody should take a timeout. Iowa is a late decision place. They go into those caucuses, Raymond. It's not a primary. They don't go in and push a lever to vote. They go in with their neighbors. They have a discussion about what they should do as to lead the country in the first vote. Those are taken very, very seriously. Almost a third of those Iowa caucus goers say they have not made their final decision. And remember, Rick Santorum was nowhere on the radar screen this time last time around, and he wound up winning Iowa. Nobody would have ever predicted that. So there's a long way to go, and surprises always come out of Iowa.
Okay, I want to look at the poll numbers. We'll put up a graphic here. This is the latest poll, NBC, Wall Street Journal, Marist poll. Trump leads the GOP in Iowa, 32% to Cruz's 25%, Rubio at 18%, Carson at 8%, Bush at 4%. Obviously, you know, Trump is the front runner. Let's move ahead to New Hampshire on this full screen. Trump also the front runner here, 31% support compared to 12% for Cruz, and then it dwindles after that. Kasich, Rubio at 11, Bush at 8. Your thoughts on what we're seeing? It seems that Trump is leading everywhere and that he's pulled away from the pack. Is there a way to change this dynamic this late in the game?
Absolutely. If the one thing Donald Trump has going for him is he talks about the polls more than he talks about policies. Okay, so he's the winning. I'm winning. I'm winning everywhere. I'm winning. Hashtag winning. And Twitter.
What's the old song? Everybody loves a winner.
Absolutely. If he loses Iowa, is he a loser? And do we go to New Hampshire with Donald Trump a loser? We don't know yet. But look, again, Pat Buchanan, my old boss, Steve Forbes, my other old boss, both those gentlemen were in single digits to low double digits going into the last week of the Iowa caucuses or the New Hampshire primary, and they wound up with double the numbers from the polls and what the polls showed. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen, but look, the difference is they did that against establishment moderate Republican candidates. Donald Trump, although he's got a past as I believe to be somewhat liberal, and certainly more establishment in both parties, he's echoing and championing a very serious conservative populist message, and it's resonating big because people think he can fix things on the border, on immigration. I think those of us concerned about social issues, we should, and the courts and all that.
That's
Supreme
a great
Court,
segue.
Those are some real risky things we might be throwing our support behind if anybody supporting that.
Greg Mueller, let's talk about religion, the social issues, how that is figuring or shaping this race. It seems a lot of these issues are taking a backseat. Now, Ted Cruz, it seems, is using a lot of them in Iowa to try to carve out and hold on to his evangelical lead, though I've got to, once again,
Trump's leading with evangelicals.
Trump's leading with evangelicals, 37%,
right.
Cruz at 20%, Carson at 11% in the NBC vote survey. What is happening here? Why are Bible-believing evangelicals and Rust Belt Catholics gravitating to and supporting Donald Trump now? Is it the issues? Is it those immigration, trade, those things sort of, pardon the pun, trumping everything else?
I think there's a little bit of that, but those people, first and foremost, love their God and they love their country. And they don't think the people in Washington love their country anymore by the way they behave. I'm not trying to say that they don't love their country. They do, but the way they're behaving, they're doing harmful things to the country. And Donald Trump's Make America Great Again theme is working. But I think we have to be very careful here. As conservatives, Trump is got a very questionable past when it comes to issues like the life issue, marriage. We have a Supreme Court that could have 4 picks. The next president could pick 4 Supreme Court nominees. That can change the court for decades. We've already seen with the little bit of a send button how they can change marriage overnight. When first asked about this on another program, when asked who he would pick as a Supreme Court justice, he talked about his sister, who's a Second Circuit Court judge in New Jersey, who had actually ruled against banning partial birth abortion in the state of New Jersey. That's not the kind of Supreme Court justice those of us who have been fighting for these issues want. He's also had some questionable things he said on marriage and even Planned Parenthood. He came out good for David Daleidon's great videos. We worked on those videos, if you recall. But then he said later, I would defund parts of Planned Parenthood. They do some good things. I said, no, they don't. I mean, you know, they're mostly in the abortion business and electioneering for Democrats. They've already endorsed Hillary. So there's some real questions that we really running the dice here. If we're not careful, we've got a Supreme Court and other important issues brewing. Can we trust him to handle those things?
You have something happening out there. Now, here's I'll tell you, just as an observer of this and not having dogs in any of these fights and certainly not affiliated with any of these campaigns, as I stand here and watch, it seems to my eye, we are seeing an emergence, and it's breaking late in Iowa because evangelical votes are at stake. You have several organizations, including one Catholic one, and a whole slew of pro-life women who've come out against Trump, and they're saying anybody but Trump, not Trump. Now, we had National Review doing a similar thing against Trump. Why, to my mind, my question is, why don't you advocate for somebody? If not Trump, who? Who else are you advocating for? And this seems to be the big problem. There is no one that these people can galvanize around and say, this is our guy, but we don't want him. Well, is that wise strategy for to throw rocks at your front runner when at least in voice he's saying, I'm 100% pro-life? I talked with Mike Huckabee today, and I asked him point blank. I said, Trump is obviously late to this pro-life fair. He claims he's 100% pro-life. Does that give you as an evangelical calm, or are you concerned about this? He said, I take him at his word. Ronald Reagan was the first governor to sign abortion into law in the first state in the Union. He became what is now regarded as the most pro-life president ever. Do you go down this aisle with Trump?
Well, I think you have to care about the Reagan analogy. Reagan started really thinking about things after those governor years. He really got in the trenches with the conservative movement. He wasn't giving money to the other side or to the equivalent of the Clinton Foundation like Donald Trump has, or paying Hilary Clinton to come to his weddings and things like that. Ronald Reagan was really having a transformation. I'm not so sure, at least I have seen that in Donald Trump. He did write an op-ed for the Washington Examiner about producing a cultural life. It was good. I don't recall, though, but I don't think he ever called for the overturning of Roe v. Wade. He said it was bad law, but he never called for it to be overturned. So there's a lot of concerns there. Again, do you trust, a lot of great things Donald Trump is saying. Do you trust him to take the conservative movement and the social conservative movement, the pro-life movement, to victory? I don't know. The jury's out on that.
Let's talk about the establishment choice. Things are seeming to firm up on that side as well. It appears it's going to be Trump versus somebody from this establishment camp. And those jockeying, moving to the front of the line, you've got Jeb Bush, you've got Marco Rubio, you've got Chris Christie, and Kasich. I mean, these are the four guys who are duking it out, and they are exchanging fire like I've never seen. Jeb Bush, I spoke to a guy who specializes in these super PACs. It's estimated that Right to Rise has spent $80 million this cycle, and we're not to Iowa yet. What does Jeb Bush have to show for that?
I don't know, not very much. I mean, I think Jeb is sort of a man without a planet, if you will. I mean, he's lost out there. His positions have sort of morphed to be sort of a more moderate liberal. He was a very good conservative governor, very pro-life governor, but he sort of transformed a different way. Where Trump is transformed to the right, Jeb sort of transformed to the left on Common Core and education and a little bit on immigration, obviously. Some people in the conservative movement have issue with that. I just don't think he ever sort of got his sea legs. And the other problem is, and this is one of my beefs, I don't think we've nominated a great communicator since Ronald Reagan. And Jeb Bush is not a great communicator, and we live in the communications age. Donald Trump's a good communicator. Marco Rubio's a great communicator. Carly Fiorina, don't count her and Ben Carson out yet. They got great ground games in Iowa. Iowa produces surprises.
But Iowa is also notorious now, Greg, and sadly known for picking the guy who doesn't win the nomination.
Well, that's very true. That's very true. But it is also known for weeding the field. I mean, the old saying is, and I still think it holds today, you either got to win, place, or show, or you're pretty much done. So for a guy like Marco Rubio tonight in that debate, that Fox debate, big deal. He's got to produce. Chris Christie got to produce. They got to be talking to the people in New Hampshire if they're not, if they think they don't think they can do very well in Iowa. So a lot of challenges for these folks. I don't know who's going to emerge as the establishment. First time in my lifetime, there's so many establishment candidates running that none of them can break out.
Do they get out after Iowa or New Hampshire?
I think nobody will get out at that level until at least after South Carolina. I think Jeb Bush isn't going to get out until after South Carolina. They're all going to throw in.
But he's not going to stay until Florida if the numbers hold as they are.
I don't think so.
With Trump 48% just
dominating. I agree with that. I don't think so. Nevada's in there too now, you know. So it's every, and don't forget, things are a little bit different. On March 1st, you got the SEC primary. That's where Trump and Ted Cruz are very popular. Remember, Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum caused a lot of pain for John McCain down the stretch in those southern states.
Let's talk just for a moment about religion, the way it's been used in this campaign. We see a lot of what I would call religion sort of propagandizing in the last days. I mean, some candidates basically doing videos with altar calls at the end. I mean, you know, I believe Jesus Christ is my personal savior, and here's what I mean, are we electing a pastor-in-chief or commander-in-chief? Your thoughts on that sort of brazen use of religion to sway chunks of the electorate? Wise or a bridge too far?
Well, I think when
we haven't heard these people talk in these terms before.
Right. I think there's two ways to look at that. One is I think people in the country out there, again, outside of Washington and New York, generally have strong Christian or Judeo-Christian values that are getting lost, especially in the Republican Party. And some Reagan Democrats, they are really people who believe in something, whether it's God or a higher power, whatever it might be. They believe that values are important. So that's one thing. So I think it's important. But trying to fake this at the 11th hour is really not a good idea. It looks like you're part of what everybody's mad at in Washington. But what I think is being lost in this, which is maybe the more important part of it, is the discussion over the attacks on religious freedom by the Obama administration and by a lot of liberal Democrats. You know, gone are the days of the great Governor Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, the Democratic governor. You know, I joke with my friends, JFK, he might have to run as a Republican in this current Democratic Party. They are just so far left on these issues, and the attacks on the Little Sisters of the Poor and the attacks on faith and how they're continuing to ram that stuff every day, whether it's the Beckett Fund or Liberty Institute or ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. There's so many cases out there. They're going up 100% or more. About attacks on religious freedom. I think the candidates should be talking about that. Like, I'd like to know, is Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio going to overturn Obamacare's abortion mandate? I mean, we're being forced to pay for abortion in Obamacare that is completely failing the American public. Where are the candidates on these? I'd rather have more discussion about these religious issues and religious persecution in the Middle East, what's happening to our Christian brothers and sisters. There's not any of that in this campaign, and I think that's a shame.
Yeah, these other issues are dominating. And the economic pain being expressed by Trump, the worry about national security and immigration, and these trade issues, I think, are coalescing and just overshadowing everything. You're not even getting to that level. But you're very right. The choosing of the next possibly 4 Supreme Court judges is a heavy and grave responsibility of the next president.
And we've got to have learned our lesson, and I hate to say this, but we've got to make sure the next president, hopefully a Republican, understands that in picking one of those potential 4 nominees, we are picking someone with a storied, constitutional, limited government record in the court system, that we don't take any risks. I think we're a little bit surprised by Chief Justice Roberts, and one of the reasons that he was put up was because he didn't have a long record of much of anything. And I think those days are over. I think Jeb Bush has been talking very good about these issues. Marco Rubio to a point, so's Ted Cruz. Again, this is an area where we know nothing about Donald Trump, other than he might have appointed his sister.
Well, no, he did say that when asked who his favorite jurist was, he said, I like Clarence Thomas, and I'd appoint more justices like him.
I want to believe that, but after he talked about his sister, again, who ruled in favor of partial birth abortion, I think somebody actually pulled him aside and he listened. You better not say that anymore. You better talk about Scalia justices or Thomas justices, because you're going to get yourself in trouble. It's a big deal, and they're not talking about it enough. I hope we see it on the Fox debate.
We shall see what happens. 1-800-221-9460 is our number in the United States. Internationally, the world over, you can call us at 205-271-2980. You can tweet me at Raymond Arroyo or email us worldover@EWTN.com. When we return, it's open line time. What issues are important to you? What are or aren't you hearing in this election season? Greg Mueller and I will try to answer your questions and comment when the World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to the World Over Live. I am joined once again on set by the president of CRC Public Relations, Greg Mueller, a veteran of many campaigns. We're discussing this wild and woolly presidential race. What issues are important to you? Email us, worldover@EWTN.com, or you can give us a call. The number's on your screen, 1-800-221-9460 in the U.S., or 205-271-2980 internationally. I want to look at the Democrats for a moment. Do we have that bite ready? The Vice President Joe Biden, spoke to a gathering of Democrats, a retreat, and he was musing on the possibility of a Trump nomination by the GOP. Can you roll that bite?
We may be given a gift from the Lord in the presidential race here. I don't know who to root for more, Cruz or Bush, what's that guy's name? He's having a fundraiser for veterans tonight, I'm told.
Once again, you know what this indicates? The dominance of Donald Trump. He drives every conversation. I mean, I can only imagine the frustration that Cruz and Rubio and Christie and these other guys feel. They're doing all this stuff. They're spending millions of dollars. And yet Donald Trump pulls out of a debate and hosts his own extravaganza, and suddenly the oxygen disappears and they can't get a break. Even Biden is talking about him. Is this a gift to Democrats?
Oh, I don't think it's a gift to Democrats. I think they got to be careful not to underestimate Donald Trump. I think one of the problems is a lot of Republicans have been underestimating Donald Trump. So I wouldn't, if I were old Joe, I wouldn't be smiling so much. I will tell you, one thing about Donald Trump that I think people have to be aware of is, just like there's some anger and frustration on the Republican side with the leadership in Washington, the union worker and the union individuals that are on the front lines of the engine of our economy out there have been getting really pretty rough time by their own union bosses and their own Democratic Party. You're not going to hear Bernie Sanders and Hilary Clinton say they're going to stand up to bad trade deals and protect the American worker. You're going to hear Donald Trump say that if he gets a nomination. And I will say, if he gets a nomination, while he might lose some constituencies, he will gain some of those Democrat constituencies that are JFK, Ronald Reagan constituency, blue-collar, middle-income working families in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. I'm not advocating for him here, but Smiling Joe better be careful. It might come back to bite him in the butt.
Let's look at these Marist polls before we go to the calls. This is the Marist Democratic poll. What it shows, a tight race in Iowa between Clinton and Sanders. Clinton at 48 Sanders at 45, almost within the margin of error. And then New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, you have Sanders at 57. Of course, it's close to his state of Vermont. Clinton at 38. He was up, Sanders was only up 4 points a month ago. And
so I think a couple things going on there. One, I don't care what you are, conservative, liberal, moderate, libertarian, socialist, I guess we have those in the race now. You want to like your candidate. And Hillary Clinton, I don't think to a lot of people, including Democrats, is very likable. That's why Barack Obama rose and he is where he is today. And I think that's a real challenge for her. She's a bad campaigner. She doesn't come off as warm and likable. And Bernie Sanders represents that anti-establishment wing in the Democratic Party.
And he's appealing to some of the same people Trump is. Disaffected union workers, Rust Belt Catholics. There's a kind of, they like his fight, they like his fervor, and that he's speaking to their pain. The question is the divergent prescriptions for curing that pain. And that's where
right.
the
Huge tax increases. And don't forget, he and the Donald agree on single-payer health care. We always forget that Donald Trump said that in the debate.
He's backed off.
I know, he says and backs off of everything. I mean,
well, that's what it means.
Right, he's a politician then, right? So I think Bernie Sanders is another embodiment of the anti-establishment wave that's shocking the country.
Joan from Florida, you have a question. Welcome to The World Over. What's your question, Joan?
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Good evening.
Sure.
I will agree with both of you. I have been listening to you for the last several minutes. I appreciate all that you're saying, but I'm in a quandary. I'm one of those angry citizens. I have been very active. I have been very active in from the very get-go when abortion was even a question whether or not we were going to accept it as a nation. Mr. Trump scares me to death. I'd like to know just exactly how long he's been a Republican, number one, and number two, why, how is it he is running on a Republican platform when he is not really pro-life? Thanks to Phyllis Schlafly, they have that written into the Republican platform, and in order to be
Joan, let's leave it there so we can get to your question. Let me get to your question. We'll get to both of them. First of all, how long has Trump been a Republican?
I don't know that anybody really knows that. I think that's part of the problem.
Well, he ran in at least since 2008.
At least in 2008, we could say he's a Republican. We don't know how far back it goes, but he did Democrat-oriented things as a Republican, which might get folks like your caller a little bit concerned. But again, this is the big issue of the day. Trump is raising a lot of issues we all care about as Republicans and conservatives and populists for the working people and all that. But can we really trust him? And I think that's where voters are going to have to make this decision. It's a tough call.
Yeah, and then the pro-life question, you know, would he run on the GOP platform that Phyllis Schlafly authored? Curiously enough, Joan, Phyllis Schlafly just backed Donald Trump. She endorsed him. Yep. So you have a strange confederacy of endorsements on all sides of this campaign. You've got evangelical leaders siding with Trump. You've got other evangelical leaders siding with Cruz. You've got pro-life people here, others excoriating him. Then you've got a legendary figure in pro-life circles and Republican circles, Phyllis Schlafly, endorsing Donald Trump. It is for the voter, I think it's very confusing watching this.
Well, and I think that's why it's going to really get down to them. You know, I think at the end of the day, endorsements only mean so much.
Yeah. Ruth from Pennsylvania, you're on The World Over. Very quickly, what's your question, Ruth?
My question is, we hear a lot about the evangelical vote, and about the evangelical
Darling, don't listen to yourself
vote.
on TV. Got to turn the volume down. Go ahead. What's your question, honey? Okay, I'm going to leave Joan because I'm going to run out of time if I don't go. But she's asking, what about the Catholic vote? We hear about the evangelical vote. What about the Catholic vote? The reason we're hearing so much about the evangelical vote, of course, is it is an outsized influence. Almost half of the electorate in places like Iowa, South Carolina. It has a real influence, right?
Well, I think that's exactly right. And that's why I think some of these issues on the social issue side are going to impact, especially the faithful Catholic vote.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to a lot of times in the Republican party. But those Catholics, that Catholic vote is also measured. Trump is hitting their interests when he talks about global trade deals that are hurting middle Americans. They're feeling that pain. And he's hitting those people. Also, border security on immigration. We keep overlooking that. The American people overwhelmingly have been asking for Washington to do this for, what, 2 decades at least now? And they keep saying they're going to do it, and they don't. And so Donald Trump is saying, I'll do it, and I'll build a wall and put my name on it. That's a security issue. These are trade issues. They're worker issues. That appeals to Catholic voters.
I also think there is some consternation among Catholics because the Bishops' Conference, the Church, has always been supportive of immigrants. And the question is, how do you deal with immigrants? Yet there is this lingering concern, particularly in the national security realm. Who's coming into the country? Shouldn't we vet them? I think in the embrace of Donald Trump, you also have a backlash against, I think, a one-stop shop solution in the Catholic Church. And you're seeing some of that consternation. So a lot of Catholics you see swinging toward Trump, even though these issues seem, on paper, diametrically opposed to the Church's position or stated position. Yeah. So we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, and I think a couple things.
On issues like trade and immigration.
Right. And I think also some of things have changed a lot over the years since Pat Buchanan run, for example. He warned about a lot of these things happening, and then they started happening. We've got infiltration across the border, potentially of ISIS. They're abusing UN refugee camps where Christians in those camps in the Middle East aren't even there because ISIS runs them. So ISIS is infiltrating them to get into this country potentially. Then you've got Kate Steinle, the young gal that was walking with her dad that was shot by an illegal immigrant who had a very long criminal record. Yeah. People ask themselves, what's going on in our own country? We can't do that. On the other hand, we're very loving people. So, I mean...
Yeah. I want to get one last call in. Joan, I believe, from Colorado. Josephine from Colorado. Sorry, Josephine. Your question very quickly before we run out of time.
Yeah, Raymond, and all the debates they've had, I've never heard, and they haven't made it clear which one of our candidates is truly and positively against abortion.
Well, they're all on the record as saying they are against abortion on demand and Roe v. Wade. The question is to what degree, how deeply committed they've been involved in this cause. This is something I heard from Rick Santorum today. He said, you know, other people talk about this. I was actually doing something about it for a long time. Your thoughts?
I think you're exactly right. But again, I think there's people like Carly Fiorina have used the pro-life issue very well. So is Marco Rubio. So is Ted Cruz. Again, it's still a question of where Donald Trump is on this. But we need to get serious about electing pro-life candidates to office again.
Greg Mueller, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me,
We will continue to watch this crazy time evolve. And, you know, the phenomenon of Donald Trump at the center of this, it is a remarkable thing to watch and chronicle for people.
Buckle in.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Greg.